This is Short Hammer. It is the 25th of October, 2020, and this is Trading Zones. In the midst of just a bunch of moving, helping people move, us also moving. So the last few weeks have been interesting. The, I've had people tell me, hey, why don't you guys just hire movers? During COVID, it's rough. You really want to be careful who you let into your house. So it's kind of crazy. But the market's been interesting, right? We get these little rides and then, the pullbacks and this choppiness, but, it's really interesting. So if I'm watching this, let me spread this. Let me zoom a little bit here. What I'm watching, if I'm looking at this market and what I want to see is I want to see what happens if this 34.48 holds, right? And we get above, look at all these wicks, no continuation. It's fascinating. If we hold a 34.48 and we can get over the lower 34.60s, can we get bullish continuation into the 34.90s? That's interesting. So I'm watching for that. That's one thing that I'm watching for. The other thing that I'm watching for is if we can't hold 34.48, will we retest the 34.20s? So I'm watching for that also. I think that'll be interesting. Maybe we go lower, maybe we don't. So I'm gonna be watching from just on an intraday scalp basis. And scalp for me may be anywhere from 10, 15 minutes to like 3 hours. So we'll see how this plays out. But I'm gonna be watching to see if we're gapped up or gapped down, how they play this 34.48 area. So if we're holding over and we squeeze, we gap up, I might ride this into 34.90s, scaling out as we go. And everyone grabs a different number of contracts. Some people aren't able to scale, but if you're able to scale out when something begins to move towards your target, it's good to lock some of that green, right? So we'll see how this shakes out, but I'll be keeping an eye on this when this pops open on Sunday. Remember, the market is, you know it's earnings season, so things are a little bit interesting. So you want to be extra cautious and extra careful. Looking at the RTY, look at these wicks, right? So what you want to see, if you want a clean play, you want this to clear these wicks, pop this 1662 area, and you want to run into 1702. What you don't want is continued sideways action. Yes, we see these dips, but we haven't been able to advance above these 16. What's this up in here? 1640s. You want to advance through this. You want this to advance, and you want strength above 1662 and a rush into the 1702. That's what you want on RTY if you're bullish. If you're bearish, you want this to fail. And what you want is, like you saw, this is a lower low. You want this to create another lower low wave and drop us down around the 1560s, this line right here. That's what you want. You want this thing to fail and sell to there. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I will not be trading, excuse me, the RTY. But just, I think it's interesting. On to Amazon. Um, Amazon I always like. And let me scrunch the chart up or squeeze the chart a little bit so you can see what I am seeing. Okay. So you see these upper wicks on Amazon. Couldn't get bullish advancement. What does that mean? Bullish advancement. Okay. Look at the candles here on the 30th of September all the way through. Now this is a 4-hour chart, right? So when you see bullish advancement, that means that this area has been an area that's been difficult to get through until here, October the 9th. We begin to see bullish advancement and just a push momentum, bullish momentum to push through these upper wicks. And you see these candles closing above where these upper wicks were preventing us from going. So it knocked the sellers out. Buyers took control. Look at this squeeze. We get up into this area around 34.58, it looks like. And the buyers begin to fade, right? And the sellers are probably washing this blood in the water. And we see this reversal, and then we drop a little bit of a bounce, and then we go down a little bit more. So, what are we watching for here? So, we're right above this 3193 ish line. And we see these lower wicks, but earnings is coming on the 29th. So maybe we get a nice little bounce here. This might have been a nice pullback or a dip buy. So we'll see what we need to do. What I would watch for on this, like I would not be getting long here. Some people will. I just think it's kind of funky. But if we get above this 3268, we may get a run into the 3340s and maybe higher. This might end up making a higher high headed into earnings. We have to see how this plays out. It's only a couple days, so we have to see the type of appetite the buyers may have. Those that were positioning for earnings, they may not be too happy about the way this is playing out, because you'd expect this to run all the way into earnings and be able to sell prior to earnings. So if those people are still holding, they're probably averaging at this level and looking for another squeeze to be able to jump out in case it stops before hitting this top around the 3450s. So yes, we're down around the 3215 area. But what we do want to see, if you're bullish, you want the buyers to squeeze this and run this up back near the 3450s. If we don't get that before earnings, it may be interesting because there may be failure to launch on this if those earnings aren't great, and we may see another dip and a sell down to the 2800s. So we'll see how this works out on Amazon. But I would expect Amazon to beat. Like honestly, I'd expect them to beat. Online sales are definitely surging. A lot more people are ordering groceries online, so their Whole Foods market will be doing well. Also, a lot of businesses are pushing their online presence heavier than ever, so they'll be doing good on that side also, as far as Amazon Web Services. So I honestly don't see a reason why Amazon would miss earnings. So we have to see. I'm not predicting a beat in any capacity in any way. And a beat does not mean that this stock will run. You could beat and sell. It could miss and pop. You never know. So I'm not a person that usually plays earnings unless I'm using one of Elise's complex option strategies. So that's usually the only way that I'll play, where it's almost like a guaranteed win, like a nice win, or a next to minimal, a very super minimal loss. So we'll see how this plays out. But I will be watching Amazon. I will not be trading Amazon this week because the premium is always insane the week of earnings, and I have no interest in that. But I will be waiting to see how this resolves as far as the day of earnings or day after earnings, and I will be riding that wave as some of the volatility is coming out of it, as far as the earnings volatility is coming out of it. So we'll see. This will probably be a really really good play on Friday once we see what levels are set. If we beat and we're running, or if there's a miss and we're selling. So we'll be keeping an eye on Amazon this week. Next up is Netflix, which already has had a pullback, already had earnings. Funny that we're stopping here around the 485 area. I would expect me personally, right? And this is just me. I would have expected a dip down into the 460s. This is why. If you were to draw, and let me get some crazy lines here. I'm not gonna get exactly what I want. I could tell. Um, I don't see what I want. Mm, I won't do this. Try to do this right now. I'll worry about this later. But if you had a just a zone, right? That when Netflix pushed up into the upper 550s, anything above 555, right? And if you remember how Tesla kind of had that going on not too long ago with I think it was like the 375 or something. They pushed up into three above 360, and you were looking to short it. That's before the big breakout. But Netflix, right? Look at all these pushes up into the 550s. Once we cross 555 and begin to push above, what we don't see are multiple or consecutive days with once it gets above that 555-ish area, pushing up into the 560s of consecutive higher highs. Don't see it. What you begin to see are the buyers getting super skittish and the sellers potentially legging in here and riding this bad boy down. So each time we've pushed up into the 555 area, the buyers, even though we see this push to 575, this is a 4 hour chart. How many days did this hold? You see what I mean? It just comes right back down. So above that 555, we're looking like it gets bearish. And the drop when it sells is, look at this wave, down around the 460s, right? And then the buyers step back in and we get a push. So where Netflix is now at the 480s, I'm not super interested. I think this thing should be a little bit lower, and I'll be watching the 460s to see if the buyers decide to step in. Don't try to guess it. Don't try to anticipate. Just expect the buyers to step in around the 460s, and if they do not, then we may be headed down here around the 440s. So I'll be keeping an eye on Netflix to see what we get here. If we get like some sort of a dead cat bounce here, or what may happen on this to push this back up. And if we don't see any bullish advancement above this 508-ish, 504-ish area, then I would expect it to go back down and continue to sell, and then be targeting somewhere in the 460s or lower. So I'll be keeping an eye on Netflix. We'll see how this shapes up technically this upcoming week. And see, even if it pushes from here, it looks like this area will be an area rough for it. This 507, 508, 504, all that area, all in here would be kind of rough. Has to get above that. And if it did that, then yeah, I'd change my perspective on it a little bit, see if we get another run back up. But just looking at this between the 460s and the 550s, that area is very interesting. So if you see this squeezing up around the 555-ish area and higher, look for the buyers to begin to exit. Just keep an eye on the volume. And if you see this sell down around the 460s, wait to see if the buyers are going to step in and push this back up. NVIDIA, earnings coming up, kind of a slight. I'm probably going to avoid this, but 531, if that holds, watch out for the 555. If we get advancement above the 555, I will be careful with these upper wicks here to see if there's the strength to push us through there. That's the 580s and the 560s. So if we get if this remains bullish and we get like a run into earnings, I'll be watching the 555 to see if we can break. If we get a pullback, a break of the 531, I'll target the 514s. So keep an eye on this. We'll see how this shakes out. But it looks like wave. Have to see what this wave does. If they pull this wave up and we get a pop of the 555 area, that might be interesting on NVIDIA. Facebook. So Facebook is also interesting. And so what we want to watch here. So nice little pullback. It held the 261. We had advancement above 264. Then we got bullish. Look at these big candles, right? Shows a little bit of momentum. Then we have some sideways action. Then we have continuation to the upside. So above 279, I'll be targeting the 291 here on Facebook and maybe even higher, the 297s. But what you want to keep an eye on is that earnings is coming up this week. So this may run into earnings, and you never know how the reaction to earnings may be. We could sell, or maybe we run a little bit higher. So this week for me is going to be a cautious week where I'm going to be waiting to see, you know, very strong setups, very strong plays, and kind of avoiding the tickers that have earnings this week. That's sort of my plan. You sort of wait for the results of earnings, and then play whatever direction the market is chosen. But this right here is a very strong move on Facebook, and a pop and squeezing the 291 prior to, and maybe even higher than 291, but a pop and squeeze here into at least the 290s would be a great sign headed into earnings, because now we will be clearly, um, especially we could put a push up into here. It'll be a clear, can we break and push all time highs, or are we going to sell? So that will be a beautiful setup. We'll see how that plays out on Facebook, but this definitely looks strong. We'll see if the buyers have the appetite to continue with this upcoming week. Then Microsoft, nice bit of selling here. Look at that curve. So we need to clear the 217.70s, and if we can do that, we can keep an eye out if we get bullish here for squeezing to the 221s. If this drops back down to the 213s, I would look for bearish advancement below, or bearish momentum below. So these candles where you see this bearish just pushing through, and then target the 208s. So we'll see how this shakes out. Could go either direction, but those are levels that I'm watching on Microsoft. Dollar Tree earnings also coming up. Well, actually, have some time for the next earnings on that. Okay, so we mentioned this in the past. Let's bounce in this zone. And what we want to see from Dollar Tree, we need some advancement here above the 97s. If we can't get above the 97s, then we're going to retrace. And that may be back to the 91s and maybe back to the 89s. So we want to watch Dollar Tree closely. And if the Bulls can give us a nice little run and get us above the 97s, then we may have an opportunity to do something here. So we want to see if this 94 area holds and we get taken to the 97s, or if there's no strength here and we see a lower low and potentially a dip into the 91.47s or the 89.40s. CI, nice pop headed into earnings. We So earnings is not this upcoming week, but it's the following week, I believe. I have to check that out to get the specific date. But nice reverse here, and a push up and pull back. Look at that flare down. Wow. And then a push. So if you're looking at CI, what you want to see is you want to see us get above. Look at these wicks here. So we're trying to push above. This looks bullish, right? Higher lows, higher highs. So you want this to push, but you want to clear these wicks up around the 187s. You want to get into the 190s. That's where you want to be on CI if you're bullish, right? And As I'm looking at this is a weird look at that squeeze. We have to see if we continue to advance or if it's like a repeat of this setup, right? So we dropped, kind of went sideways a little bit. Then we had this pop. Then the buyers lost the appetite. Then we pull back. So it's almost like we had between the 173s and the mid 180s. It was kind of a zone where we got to the top of that zone and we sold, got to the bottom of that zone and we bought. But that pattern was broken here on the 10th of September. And look, now we had back test, we going lower. So popped up, maybe the buyers are out. And then here we go. Nice little push to the upside here. So I'd keep an eye on CI to see if the momentum continues to the upside headed into earnings, or if this just dies off and those 185s, roughly that area to 187 ish, turns out to be a strong supply area, and we get a little bit of selling. So we'll see how this works out. But this is an interesting setup. Nice break of all this congestion area and squeeze on CI. McDonald's and earnings is coming up in November. So this this is interesting. So we are up on McDonald's, but what we want to see is separation. This between this 226 and this 231, it just feels like we're not getting a strong decision in either direction. Look how small these candles are. What I would love to see from McDonald's, if I'm bullish, I want to push above this 231 area, and I want bullish momentum, big candles to the upside for the squeeze. That I would like to see. If we're not going to do that, I'd rather us fail the 226s, get a sell to the 222s, 221s, the most preferably the 216s. That to me would be great on McDonald's. We'll see how this shakes out. But if we drop below the 226s, I'll wait to see if we're going to go sideways a bit. If we don't, if we continue to dip, I'll be short McDonald's. CMG, want to see advancement above this 1348. Nice dip here. A little sideways action. Nice pop. Back test. We're holding above the 1270s. That's nice. So that looks good. Actually looks pretty good. So we'll see if we see a pop above the 1348s and a push to the 1390s or higher. If this reverses again and we don't get this squeeze, a sell through the 1270 area should open up 1239, then potentially 1187. Look at these tops here and here. So back to 1186 would not be out of the question, depending on what the buyers and sellers are doing this upcoming week. But this is an interesting setup on CMG. It looks like it wants to run, but we've got to clear these 1348s and these upper wicks and just jam. Maybe even a gap up here would be nice. Let's see, before we get to Goldman, take a peek at Intel. Nice dip on Intel. The I just gotta scratch this up a little bit. So looks like we had earnings. We had a nice little sell. This is an area where the buyers have stepped in the past. We'll see if that holds, or if they do step in and push this even lower. But if you look at the last earnings where we had selling, it kind of tried to pull the same little sideways move here. Then it just dropped even lower. So we want to see if this is going to pull that and then drop lower than this 47. If we don't get bullish and get back above 49, 45, then 42 is very possible. So this will be an interesting interesting play this upcoming week to see if the buyers have the appetite to drive this back out of the danger zone. So we'll see. But Intel is interesting. Goldman back inside of this little channel. Let me extend it. Actually, I'll do that another time. It's not important right now. And we'll see if the buyers will get us up out of here. Banks have been really interesting. Earnings have been interesting for banks. And so we'll see if we can get back above the 207 on Goldman Sachs and squeeze into the 214s would be nice. If we can't get back over the 207s, I would be watching the 197s or even the 189, though this is doubtful unless we get some surprising news. So we'll see. So looking at the SPY chart, you can see some of the chop, but we're holding above the 344s, which is nice. Look at this area here, nice little pullback. So I'll be watching this to see if we can hold and push above this 344 and get a pop into the 351s and potentially the 358s. So we'll see how the SPY moves this upcoming week. This could also be a ticket that's when getting ready to sell off. So 344 and just sell through to the 320s. So this could be interesting. We'll be keeping an eye on this. In some ways, it looks like they're trying to take this thing for a ride, but we'll see. If you like this video, please hesitate to tap the like button. And if you'd like to receive more content like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Power of Pivots, where you can look forward to receiving videos from me, but also amazing content from Elisa as she shows you how she utilizes her power of pivot strategy to find great intraday setups, great overnight setups, great swing plays, and also penny plays. Please remain safe. Wish for you a wonderful week of trading, and thank you for your time. Also, side note, definitely keep your eyes and ears open. We may have a little surprise coming soon, but we will alert you in a video or for those on our email list through an email. Thank you so much for your time.